this story, which I think is pretty massive. Like TVNZ covered it tonight. I don't know if I didn't see 3 tonight. And when this kind of international world, especially to do with Israel and Gaza, filters down to like local, national television networks, but that are in other countries, especially in New Zealand, it's getting somewhere. TV1, TV3, they're our only news. There's not like this 24-hour news cycle. In New Zealand, we're not looking to fill time like someone like CNN would have to do, because they're just on all the time, which means the stuff that makes it to the news is pretty much the 10 or 15 stories, probably not 15, maybe 15 if you include the sports, that are the big news stories of the day. So to have this be on TVNZ tonight, also the same day it was released, actually shows the level of importance this story has. As I said, I woke up this morning, opened up my phone, had a notification talking about Israel Channel 12. So this is not a Channel 12. This is a French called I-24 station. I'm not sure where they sit in a political affiliation, but Israel's Channel 12 reports Benjamin Netanyahu's senior officials discussing implementing new war tactics as Hamas refuses to budge in ceasefire talks, despite IDF's rejections. Israel's senior officials from Netanyahu's office told the Channel 12 of their plans to launch a more intensive military offense in the Strip, in the areas where it has not yet operated, and that would probably imply in the south, where all the refugees are, because that's about the only place they haven't operated, where the remaining Israeli hostages are understood to be held, in addition to the civilian population. The channel reported an official saying, "The decision has been made. We are going to occupy the Gaza Strip." And of course, to occupy a landmass, you need to ethnically cleanse that landmass, because even if the inhabitants stay there, they stay there under your rule. That means their culture, their everything is being cleansed from that area. As I said, a couple of things happened in my conversation. I had a problem with my mic. So good news is you don't have to look at me. And also I forgot that I had the wrong branding on. So this is not Craig Rennie's Locked Out. This is my Locked Out, and then it becomes my BHN. Got Ricardo on, spoke to a couple of Greens today and said who would be the best person to come and have a chat about this. And they all said you should talk to Ricardo. So let's have a look at this conversation now. And Ems, when we get back, I'll give you the space to share your thoughts on it, because I kind of share all my thoughts in the conversation. So enjoy me and the dog talking to Ricardo Menendez March, and we'll be back shortly. I want to welcome to the show Ricardo Menendez March from the Greens. Welcome, Ricardo. Apologies for not being here sort of in person, although I am still here in person. So yeah, good to see you.
Likewise.
Well, you don't really see me, but I understand what you're saying. It's like, it's a colloquial. It's like, let's go out for a coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I still say to people, let's go out for a coffee.
Good to see your thumbnail on the screen.
Hey, I woke up this morning to some quite shocking news. And that is, like, just to put it bluntly, that Benjamin Netanyahu has come out and he has said that they are going to take over from the river to the sea. And apparently that's all a-okay, sweet as, and there is it's an okay thing for him to say. He has said that before when he says from the Jordan West they want control. The defenders of, I don't want to say of Israel full stop, but certainly of the policies of Israel, have long been of the opinion that this is a defensive war. October 7th, the critics, I count myself as one of them, have been saying this is genocide, this is an ethnic cleansing, and it seems today that they've officially kind of announced, that's exactly what it is. I want to play a couple of little bits of audio and video. They're only 30 seconds each, just to give us an up-to-date point as to where we are.
There's major news coming out of Israel tonight, where in a matter of hours, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, is expected to urge his security cabinet to back a full military takeover of the Gaza Strip. That's according to Israeli media reports that a source tells CNN are accurate. Senior officials close to the Prime Minister are quoted as saying the die is cast, we're going for full conquest. If Israel's military commander doesn't agree, he should resign.
So that's just a very quick clip from our friends at CNN. And then this was actually on One News tonight, and it was the second half of an article. The first half, they were speaking to the brother of a hostage, and he was shown emaciated, and they were talking about how his brother is still suffering as a hostage. So when you hear the start of this conversation saying the person's name still trusts Benjamin Netanyahu, who's talking about the brother of the hostage, who they've just interviewed previously to this. But let's just get a touch on this as well.
Eli says he trusts Prime Minister Netanyahu to do the right thing, to try to free his brother. But many of the hostage families say that intensifying the war now would lead the country and their loved ones towards disaster. In Gaza, it's difficult to see what there is left to destroy. And today, in a video addressed to President Trump, 600 former Israeli security officials agreed, saying the country is no longer fighting a just war. Israel's critics would say images like this support that. 9-year-old Mariam is chronically malnourished. Today, her mum took her to hospital. She says before the war, she was a healthy girl, weighing 25 kilos. Now, she weighs just 9.
I expect death at any moment. I wake her up when she sleeps to make sure that she's still alive.
For Mariam, and for thousands of hungry children across Gaza, they are clinging on.
And despite the concerns from the 600 former Israeli security officials, it's not clear what pressure, if any, Donald Trump will choose to exert on Israel's prime minister.
So there you go. Yeah, I guess I just can throw you the ball if you're okay with that. What are your thoughts around what you have seen and what we're seeing now? It feels like a pretty momentous day in that it's kind of the world's worst kept secret is finally officially out.
Yeah, I mean it's harrowing, but as you've said, it's that mask-off moment where they're not even pretending that this was always about driving Palestinians out from their homeland, and it was never about defending themselves. We've known this for a while. Palestinians have been warning us for quite some time, and I think this is also the end result of when I say international community, I mean particularly governments, and singling out here Western governments, not taking meaningful action to sanction Israel in a way that would actually make them feel like there are consequences for this genocide. And I think unless our government and others take leadership and punish Israel by sanctioning them, I just think Israel will continue feeling like they can carry out this genocide without facing any real consequences.
Yeah, well, we all saw in America, and I even think AOC was involved in funding Israel and talking about, therefore, defensive weapons in the last kind of week to 10 days, which was very quickly pointed out that the defensive weapons, the Iron Dome that Israel has got, becomes offensive because they know they can do whatever they want and they're safe under the Iron Dome. So even their defensive weapons funding is contributing to their offensive weaponry. So interesting to see Trump came out today and said if any states in America speak out against or go against Israel, he will not give them funding for emergencies, like if they have a hurricane or a cyclone or something come through. And one then, of course, has to wonder, is he going to try and put that pressure on the world? Will he say to the world, if anyone speaks out against Israel and what they're doing, your tariffs will go back up to 100%? It does feel like, and I don't want to be pithy and kind of school kiddish, but the I told you so moment, it's like it is utterly frustrating when there have been those of us shouting this from the rooftops for such a long time. And unfortunately, I couldn't wish enough that I was wrong in this situation. I'm sure most are the same, but all the worst warnings we have put out there are now coming to pass. Israel is talking about settling occupying Gaza, that means the inhabitants of Gaza cannot be there. That is the definition of ethnic cleansing and removing them from there. And I guess if they don't want to remove, then you start to get into genocide and eliminating them altogether. It's just the worst of the worst, Ricardo.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's what we do in relationship to Gaza is going to leave a stain in our humanity for quite some time. You know, we've got a genocide that is literally being live streamed in front of our eyes. And we've got politicians who feel like because we're quote unquote, you know, too far from Gaza that there's nothing we can or should do. And then we've got, on the other hand, politicians who are acting very openly like tyrants, punishing anyone who dares speak out against this genocide. I think, though, I want us to feel a sense of hope and a sense that we can still do something, and we must continue to fight for the people in Gaza because it's the right thing to do. And I think, despite what we're seeing in the news today, I think there is a call for all of us out there to do everything that we can to put in place real consequences on Israel for the genocide that has been carried out. And domestically, there are things people can do to try and put in place real consequence towards Israel. And that includes boycotting, divesting, and also pushing for sanctions. And so we've got organizations who've put out a list of products that everyday people can continue to boycott. These are products from corporations that have links to Israel and corporations who are benefiting from the ongoing genocide. But also, we've got a members' bill in the ballot to put in place a sanctions regime on Israel that people can support by writing to their local MP and asking them to support this bill.
What does that mean?
6 more MPs.
What does that mean, Ricardo? What does it mean to put sanctions? Like specifically, what would it achieve? What are you asking?
Yeah, so I mean, we know that there's a range of people who are literally economically benefiting from this genocide. I mean, for example, we've seen Francesca Albanese putting out a report on the corporations that have literally benefited from the displacement of Palestinian people. And by that, I mean profiting, whether it's from the selling of weapons or serving people who are part of the IDF. When it comes to the sanctions regime we want to put in place, what this looks like is similar to what we had for Russia. And that is a sanctions regime that can target, for example, politicians, government officials, and it is an effective tool to effectively tighten the ability for these people to effectively profit from a genocide. And I think this is key because part of the challenge is we've got people who are becoming richer, who are gaining more land, more control, and more power from the senseless killing of civilians, and sanctions is one way in which we can restrict and punish that profiting from war crimes. And so again, this is something we can meaningfully do from here in Aotearoa, no matter how far away we feel we may be. And unless we all do our part, Israel and Netanyahu and basically everyone who's benefiting from this genocide will feel like they can continue carrying it out without any real consequences. And I think that's the biggest thing we can do to try and stop it at this point. Yeah.
And look, don't believe the bullshit that we're too far away. You know, we're 13,000 miles, I think it is, from South Africa. In 1981, we made a lot of noise about what went on there and evoked part of the change. We're 11,000 miles, I think, away from Israel. I think it's something similar to that. And so don't buy into the bullshit that how far away we are, we can't make a difference. We've proven that we can. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I only say that because that's the lines that we've been hearing from.
But that's what I'm saying. Don't buy that bullshit by the people who are saying it. I also say, speaking of that bullshit, and look, maybe this is a little bit the vindictive part of me, those people who have been profiting off the pro-Zionist narrative in the media and stuff, especially in the independent media, and the people who have been pushing that barrel for so long, I'm like, call them on it. You know, tag them in this story, send it to them. The people who have been pushing this narrative are no different in my instance from those kind of disinformation dozen who pushed the narrative around COVID that ended up leading to people in New Zealand dying. And the same sort of thing of those people have given some less informed people are soft landing to stay ignorant. And if you're staying ignorant now, it's by choice, because there are too many organizations, there are too many individuals, none of whom are connected, that are all saying the same thing through what they're seeing happening in Gaza.
And I think the antidote to all of that, in my view, is to also break away from the propaganda machine and to actually, I would encourage people to have conversations in their workplace, on their family dinners, at the barbecue, with mates, on the actions that they can take to support people in Gaza. And I think it's having those open-hearted and open-minded conversations with our peers that wrestles control away from the propaganda that we see proliferated in social media, and the way that actually social media algorithms effectively punish people from speaking out on these issues. I think the antidote to all of this is to tap into our real life connections that we have with people, and to have those brave conversations about our shared humanity, about our sense of justice and fairness. And while the news coming out today may be harrowing, I also want us to remember that the movement for Palestine is stronger and more organized and louder than it's ever been before. We've seen how hundreds of thousands of people showed up in Australia to rally for people in Gaza. And so I think if we tap into the power that we have and our relationships with people on the ground and everyday conversations, we can break through, I think, the propaganda machine that unfortunately social media corporations are enabling by having algorithms that effectively shut down people speaking out on Gaza. And so the fight must be also held in our everyday lives by actually having these conversations and listening to people with curiosity, people who may not be fully informed on the issue because they've actually been exposed to the propaganda more than anything else. And so the only way to break through that is by actually inviting people to feel their hearts and that sense of fairness and justice that most of us hold, and then take action by either writing to the local MP, to show up at their local rally, to go and look at the list of products that Palestinian people are encouraging us to boycott, because we cannot fall into despair, into a sense of saying, there is nothing we can do. There is always something we can do, and I think we should keep trying to take action until the genocide ends.
Hey, Ricardo, thanks for your time this evening. Last question. With the announcement by Netanyahu, or at least the behind-the-scenes stories we're being told, that it's very clear that he wants to publicly now and honestly own all the territory from the Jordan West. What do you think our government, led by Christopher Luxon, should be doing or saying now that the veil has dropped? There is no longer a need to try and guess what they're doing here, because they're saying it. What do we need to do officially as a government, as a country?
There are so many things the government can do, but I think what we need to do is move away from words of concerns at the United Nations and joint weak statements, and actually show a condemnation, the put in place sanctions, recognize Palestinian statehood, and actually join the South African case to hold this Netanyahu and the Israeli government at the highest court possible, and then on the international stage. There is so many tangible actions our government could choose to be taking, and instead, basically, all we're getting are weak statements on international platforms that end up doing nothing but provide cover for the ongoing genocide. And so don't let anyone make you believe that there's nothing our government could be doing. There's a range of actions our government can take. One of them is to put in place sanctions, but there's a range of other things that our government could be doing too.
Ricardo Menendez March. Hey, thanks, dude. Thanks for joining us this evening. I really
No worries,
appreciate you
Pat.
jumping
Thank you
in.
so much.
And thanks for keeping on fighting this fight. It's super important.
Kia ora. Have a good night.
So there you go, from the Greens, Ricardo Menendez March. So there you go. Ems, first time you seeing that conversation. Got any thoughts?
Yeah. Also, just before we get into it, I loved his gamer headset. It was very cool. Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's not something I'm particularly well versed in this conflict, but for me, it's pretty clear that it's a genocide from the beginning.
Yeah.
Not from the beginning, from the very, very beginning, from the attacks, because prior to that, I didn't really know much about that area and the conflicts and that sort of thing. And I was also I've fallen to the propaganda of the chopping of heads and killing babies and all of that stuff because it sounded so horrific. And obviously, if the news was reporting it, then it must be somewhat true. Only to later find out that was all propaganda from the IDF, from Israel, and none of that stuff has been substantiated. Yeah, and then the more I learn from people who actually know about the stuff is it's pretty obvious what the tactic was or is, and now it's clearly defined for us. But it has been really interesting to watch the world change its mind. Everything from Republicans who in America you had people that were pro-Trump and pro-Republican starting to change their tune a little bit and be like, actually, I don't know if we do support Israel in this. Once they started to see how horrific it was, just the continuation and how horrific and clear it was a genocide. It is a genocide. But then also the world changing their mind as well. The UN starting to think about doing something. And instead of it being Hamas, the bad guys, Gaza and Palestine is nothing more than Hamas, terrorist organization. And we're kind of getting away from that and going, you know what, Israel is definitely in the wrong here. It's been very interesting to watch it over the last 2 years, 2.5 years.
It's also interesting you're talking about like Republicans and Democrats and what they're doing. And I mean, I think that's fair to say, well, it's fair to assume, I guess, based on donor money and also based on the evangelical base in America, which is a very powerful, very large voting base, how many of the American politicians are still on Team Israel. And even if they say publicly that's not official, last week there was $500 million, I think, dollars that was given to Israel for quote unquote defensive weapons. That's what I was saying to Ricardo. If in Israel their defensive weapons enabled them to use their offensive weapons without concern, because basically they've fired missiles into I think 5 countries in the last 6 months, and the only reason they can do that is because of the Iron Dome. So the defensive weapons are actually opening the door for their offensive weapons. So it's not quite as black and white. It's only money to defensive weapons. But still, and I think it was, who was it that said it? I can't remember. One of the commentators I was watching, something like 13% of Democrats, so lefties, our Labour Party MPs, the equivalent of, are fully on board with Israel's in the wrong, whereas 88% of Democrat voters are. So you don't see that. You see the disparity between the two of them. And I was going to show you, this is still happening. So I'm sorry to do, this is like meta show within a show, because this is Kyle Kulinski's show, but he was watching, he played a clip from, I think this guy's a politician, I forget his name right now, and just still to this day going on CNN saying the starvation is a fraud. It's a lie. You've all been fooled. It's not real. Have a listen to this.
There's this asshole on CNN. His name is Scott Jennings. Really high in his own supply. Really thinks he's God's gift to this earth. And he's like, the MAGA voice on the CNN panels. And this guy is smug. He's arrogant. He's dumb. He's a dipshit. And he really got caught speeding recently because he basically did Holocaust denial right in front of everybody's face. So they're talking about the starvation in Gaza, and he says something so preposterous that the otherwise mild-mannered CNN host has to go in there and fucking check his ass and lay down the law. Watch this.
People are seeing things with their own eyes, and what they're seeing is massive amounts of propaganda. Look what the New York Times had to admit to just in the last few days. I've heard
what did the New York Times admit?
Running a photo that was a complete and total hoax.
They admitted that they ran a photo of a starving child who also had a disease.
You're gonna defend
this? Is that the admission?
It's a hoax.
You're gonna act like people
aren't starving? And it was sent around the world to make people think that Israel had starved that child. He had
They did starve that child. They did.
Yeah.
They did.
So that was, I'm sure you guys know about that. The front cover of the New York Post was a child who has a has a disability as well, which atrophies muscle. But he had that, and he was starving. And then, of course, they go on to talk about what about the dozens of other children in that story that didn't have it. And the irony is, and I don't know whether it was Kyle or said it or I heard it somewhere else, is the child who's got the disability or the affliction. One of the reasons you get that is when you're in the womb and your mother's not getting enough nutrients to actually enable you to form correctly and to a healthy amount. So probably because his mother was somewhat malnourished, that was the thing that led him to having this condition. And on top of that, he's getting starving. We said this last night. If you are taking that stance now, that this is all a hoax, you either are the dumbest person in the world, you're being willfully ignorant, like you're lying, or you're on a paycheck from somewhere. Because there's 100 aid agencies, independent of one another, are saying what's happening. British doctors are coming out of Gaza talking about one day there'll be a whole bunch of kids coming in being shot in the groin. The next day there'll be a whole bunch of kids coming in shot in the head. The next day a whole bunch of kids will come in being shot in the ankle because they're being used as target practice. And they're actually aiming for different parts of the bodies on different days. The witnesses are the doctors who are getting these kids brought to them. And then you've got that Green Beret who we've talked about for a couple of weeks now, who was employed to stand on the wall between the two places and saw his fellow professional soldiers shooting and killing starving people looking for food. It's like it's the biggest conspiracy of all times with literally tens of thousands of eyewitnesses all lying, or the IDF and the Israeli government are doing this. You got to be willfully ignorant. There's no other way.
Yeah, I have no qualms that I am on the correct side in history in saying that it's a genocide and that this is happening. I have no qualms in that at all, because I feel like it's one of those things that in hopefully not too long, people will really, will really see the truth in all of this. Although it probably should have been recognized a little while ago.
Yeah, and I think you are.
Once we started to get clear details. But,
I think you're already seeing that people, and yes, also once you see people sort of nefariously coming onto the right side of history, in other words, they're going, I've always been over here, you know that the tide has turned. So that's where we're at.
Yeah, no longer hide it.
Couple of texts. Cyber Goblin says Simon Dallow says nothing and yet everything with that face. I want to come back
right
to
at the end
Goblin.
of that. He right at the end of that story, basically because obviously he's watching the monitor the story so that he's ready to come back on, and you could just see his grimace. It's off.
It's funny when they can't hide it. When they can't hide it anymore, eh? Like I tried out for that. I had an audition for the Aramoana movie, and they said to me, the people having the audition, "What do you remember of Aramoana?" And I think it was Judy Bailey, and it was Judy Bailey's red eyes. So Judy Bailey was doing the news, and obviously TV1 back then, or TVNZ, had a live feed to Aramoana, and she'd been crying. You could tell. She did the news at 6 o'clock, and they'd had all the feed all the way up, and she'd been seeing what was going on, and she'd been crying. And so my memory of that day was, her red, obvious, Judy Bailey, Angela Diordney, anyway, the female presenter, obvious red eyes from what they were saying. So I got it.
That reminds me of Hillary Barry during the earthquakes. She had the same thing. Her live feed, she was in tears.
Totally.
Hard job.
Actually, we'll come back to Cyber Goblin because I'll give us something a bit of uplifting to finish on, because this is heavy stuff. James says, in 77 years, Israel has never been in a just war. James also says, there are many Palestinian diaspora and refugees in Aotearoa. They are us. We are a Five Eyes partner. What we do matters. Speak up and take action. I wonder after the, I don't know if you saw it, Ems, but the march over the weekend in Sydney they were reporting 90,000, but people are saying over 100,000. I'm intrigued because there've been marches. You guys have the Remembrance Bridge every Saturday in Christchurch that John Minto and his mates go to. I wonder if this Saturday might be a bit of a day to get out there, and I wonder if we'll see a bit of a swell, especially after what's been announced today by Israel. Peter says we need to stop the Israel working holiday visa. Yeah, I mean, at what point do we get to where we actually send home the Israeli ambassador? I mean, that's the thing. What do we want them to do?